Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is episode 198 called Payal. Today's episode is sponsored by Prove, a women's health company dedicated to providing information and solutions on key fertility hormones so they can reach their goals faster. Prove founder Amy Beckley, PhD, invented the first and only FDA-cleared PDG test after her own battle with infertility. When she learned that her 7 miscarriages and 2 rounds of IVF could have been prevented by an inexpensive progesterone supplement, she set out to help other women better understand the success of their ovulation from home. Prove's newest kit, Complete, allows women to measure all 4 key cycle hormones that impact conception from the comfort of home so they can get pregnant faster. With just one test kit, you can better understand ovarian reserve, identify up to 6 fertile days, and check for successful ovulation. And now the free Prove Insight app takes your hormone knowledge one step further by providing numeric hormone levels, info about what they mean, and personalized action plans to help you reach your fertility goals faster. That's not all, guys. Prove also offers an entire suite of at-home hormone tests and hormone-supporting products to empower you with the right information on your journey. Okay, so you know I love female-founded companies and products that can truly benefit anybody battling infertility. So definitely check out Prove. It's spelled P-R-O-O-V. You can go to provetest.com, P-R-O-O-V-T-E-S-T.com, and you can enter the code ALLIE25 and you'll get 25% off your first Prove order of $25 or more. Again, Infertile AF listeners are getting a special discount code, so go to provetest.com, P-R-O-O-V-T-E-S-T.com, enter the code ALLIE25, A-L-I-25, and you'll get 25% off your first Prove order of $25 or more. Thanks, Prove. This episode is supported by Receptiva DX. The Receptiva DX test can help couples struggling with unexplained infertility. Getting pregnant isn't easy, as so many of you know. Many couples struggle with infertility, and unexplained infertility can be particularly frustrating. Women facing unsuccessful IVF may not know that endometriosis is the underlying cause, a disease that can impact the success rates of IVF treatments and often has no symptoms. The Receptiva DX test can help identify endometriosis before an embryo transfer, and it has the potential to save women the stress, anxiety, and cost of multiple failed IVF attempts. The good news is, multiple studies show treatment of women with a positive Receptiva DX test improves live birth outcomes by over 50%. Receptiva DX can detect all stages of endometriosis and help women make better decisions in planning for pregnancy. You can learn more at receptivadx.com or download their app, which is also called Receptiva DX. Hey everybody, so I'm so honored to share this story with you guys today. Payal is a very dear friend of mine who I met when she joined Fertility Rally. I actually got to hang out with her IRL in Austin in January of 2022 at our Rally IRL event, and she is just fucking amazing. She is caring, she's whip smart, she loves everybody in this community. She's fun to hang out with. She's all the things. And today she is going to tell us her story, where she is so far in her family building journey. She is the mama to Zion Edward, who was with us earthside earlier this year from 7-4 to 7-6. And we love Zion Edward so much. We're going to talk a lot about him, and we're going to talk about what came before she was pregnant with him. And then we're going to talk about the placenta abruption that she had at 24 weeks and 2 days, which led to Zion being born early and then very, very tragically not staying with us earthside for more than about 48 hours. So we're going to get into all of that. And I just can't thank her enough for being so open about the story. I told her, when we were talking just as friends, if you ever want to share it, let me know. There's no pressure, obviously. I know it's very raw and all that. And she came to me when she was ready and she said, let's do this, because she really does want to help people and she wants to talk about this. So it is this is a long episode in a good way because we get into a lot. And it's a very special one to me. So Payal, I love you. Ron, I love you. Zion, I love you. And without further ado, this is Payal's infertility story. Payal. It's so good to talk to you. I haven't seen you in person since we met in Texas in January of last year or this year, earlier this year. But I feel like I immediately just adored you. So I'm so happy to know you and met you through Fertility Rally. So thank you for doing this tonight. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you, and thank you for having me.
Of course.
I'm gonna kidnap you and bring you to Texas. We're
Oh
just
my
kidding.
God. I love it there. That Austin trip was such a great time. It was like one of the best days of my life, for real. It was so good. Just meeting all you guys. Okay, so we're going to talk about your family building journey so far. So tell me, first of all, your husband Ron, who is amazing. Tell me how you guys met.
So we actually met the senior year, well, right before the senior year of college. So he actually I went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and he went to Duke. And so he was in Madison for like a summer internship and was hanging out with friends of friends, and, how we do back in our childhood days where we're drinking and getting wild. We met at a pregame, and I walked in, and I saw him, and my first thought was, well, that guy's really drunk and he's an asshole, and I do not want to spend any time with him. They were playing drinking games or something, and he was like handing out drinks to people.
Uh-huh.
I don't like him. I don't like him at all. And then naturally at the bar, we ended up just kind of talking, and that was pretty much it. I don't know that we ever really stopped talking after that. So
Well, when were you like, oh, wait, he's not an asshole. He's actually great.
about 3 days later.
Okay.
So we like hung out all night, and I was just like, oh, like he's just kind of fun to be around, when you're out drinking and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
met up the next day and met up the next day. And then I was like, oh, like I actually think that there's more to him than just like lots of alcohol and lots of
Mm-hmm.
fun drunk shenanigans. And so, it was that summer that we kind of like transitioned from just being acquaintances to
Uh-huh.
doing the friends with benefits thing to like we're going to do long distance. We did long distance for, a little over a year.
How did that go?
It was interesting. I don't know that I ever shared this with you. He was actually my first ever boyfriend.
Okay.
So, I didn't really know what to expect because you watch all the movies and talk to people, and it's, hometown sweethearts and
Right. All those good Hallmark movies with the long distance
yeah, oh yeah.
romances.
So with long distance, it was, a lot of Skype, a lot of texting.
Uh-huh.
We would try to see each other about every 6 to 8 weeks or so, which felt like a lot when you're a poor college kid and you're flying halfway across the country.
Right. So because you're in Wisconsin, he's in North Carolina.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. So we, made it work.
Yeah. That's amazing. So when did you know that you guys were going to end up together? Was there a certain point?
Probably, well, so I think it was different for both of us. I
Uh-huh.
think for me, it was pretty early on. Like, I visited him that first Thanksgiving we were together. So I went to Duke for Thanksgiving, and it was just the two of us, and it was super low key, but we had a really just good time. And I was like, this is somebody that, I can spend time with and not really do anything. And it just felt comfortable, and it felt like just this is how it should be. And so I think at that point I was like, I'm gonna hold on to him as long as I can. I think for him it was a little bit longer. He moved to Chicago the year after graduation. We both moved to Chicago, me for pharmacy school and him for work. Um, and I think it was probably a year or two into living in Chicago that he kind of started realizing like this isn't just a fling anymore.
Mhm.
Where it felt more serious. At that point, we had met each other's families, and he had started talking about the M word, not committing to anything, but just like, is this something that we see ourselves doing? And he's very, very like rational, very organized, not very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Spontaneous.
Spontaneous. Yeah, he's
Uh-huh.
not. And so when he started dropping, should we get engaged? Like, should we move in together? I was like, okay, now he's like actually like serious about this.
Right. Vince is that same way, not spontaneous at all. Everything needs a plan and like lots of like headspace to like get in the, like, get in that headspace before you're going to do something big?
There's not a pro-con list that Ron has met that he has not liked. Like everything, everything gets a spreadsheet. Everything
Right.
is just, he is
Very analytical.
analytical. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love that. So when did you guys start? Was there any point before you got married that you had talked about family building, how many kids you wanted, any of that stuff?
No, we had, so he grew, it's me and my brother, and then for
Mhm.
him, one of three. And so when we had started kind of talking about getting like engaged and everything, I actually historically never wanted kids. When we had kind of initially talked about it, he was like, well, I don't really know. And I was like, well, I don't want any kids. And, I don't want to deal with any of that.
Yeah. Why did you feel that way?
It just, it was something that I never really, when I was growing up, and it was never really something I saw myself as a mom.
Mhm.
It was just like so far away from who I was. I was so focused on my education and my career that like I couldn't really see outside of that.
Mhm.
So, whenever the thought even came up, there was just like this instant, like, well, that's not my life, that's not
Mhm.
what it's going to be. And so when we first started like talking about getting married, it was like just so far out of the question. And I don't know that he ever really was in the same boat as me of like, I don't ever want kids, but he was like, well, if you don't want kids, then we'll figure it out, right? Like we'll make it work. And so over the years, I'd kind of gone from like 0 kids to like, maybe one just to like make him happy.
Uh-huh.
We'll kind of do that, but like it was never something that I was all in on.
Like pining over.
Nope. Like some
Okay.
people know right from the time that they're like itty bitty, they're like, I'm going to be a mom, or
Yeah. I
I'm gonna
always ask this question. I always get a mixed bag of responses. Some people are like you and say, I never really thought it. And I was always kind of like, I always just assumed that I would, but I wasn't like, oh my God, it's like the thing I want the most in the world. I just assumed it would kind of happen, I guess. So I was kind of in the middle. Fast forwarding a bit, what happened when you guys started to try, when you decided to try to build your family?
um, gosh, so we got married in 2018,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I hit 30 like that same year. And that's like
Same Pile, same.
biological clock is like ridiculous because I went from like, I don't want kids to like, I want to have 15. Like it
Oh,
was
really?
nuts. It
So
was,
you had like a physical reaction, like the
yeah,
biological
like
clock was like tick
it was
fucking
it
tock.
happened probably on May 4th. Like my birthday's on May 3rd. And like literally that same month, I was like, no, I want to have kids. Like I want to have lots of kids. Like I want
That's
to
so
have so many
interesting.
kids that don't know what to do with them. Right. Like
Okay.
it was just insanity. And Ron being, Mr. Analytical was like, well, we need a list,
Whips out the spreadsheet.
whips out the spreadsheet, we need a plan. And he's like, we'll start January 1st. Like, let's be married for like 6 months and have a good time. And then we'll start like January 1st. And like, I remember, gosh, it was one of the evenings where we're like sitting and having a drink, talking about, like the list and kind of what do we need to prepare, like
Mm-hmm.
savings, we need, what doctor's appointments and all that. And I remember saying we need to put money aside for fertility treatments.
Really?
He was like, you're nuts. Like, no, we don't. And, why do you even think that? And I'm like, I can't explain it, but like my gut tells me that this is going to be hard. And
Interesting.
he, kind of did the typical Ron thing where he's like, no, we're not gonna, we're gonna be fine. Like if you want to look into, what we need to do ahead of time, like eating healthier, exercising, whatever it might be, like we'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
But like I don't think we're gonna need fertility treatments. We're young, there's not any reason to think. And
Mm-hmm.
I still to this day cannot point out like why I had that gut feeling.
It's like
but
your
like
gut intuition. But did you have anybody in your family pile that like had issues or anything?
not a soul.
Interesting.
There was nothing really that would point to we were gonna, I mean, I'd had regular periods. I'd had, like all of the things that make sense to have, I'd had. So, it wasn't even like, well, I don't have a period, so I know it's gonna be hard. Like I'm getting a period every month. Like all of it is, what you would expect it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, it might have been intuition. It might have been just paranoia in terms of like, I'm hearing all these stories and I'm reading about difficulties and all that. Not entirely sure.
Yeah. Where had you been reading about them and like hearing stories? Like friends of yours or like
friends, but I think I'd also just started looking into like, what do I need to do to get ready to have a baby? And it talked about like, start your prenatal, quit smoking, go and do like a preconception visit. And then it like, all the articles naturally go into, and if you have had trouble, for the last year or whatever, like you need to see a fertility specialist. And we hadn't actively been trying. I was still on birth control at this point. But it was just one of those things that it like stuck with me. Like, this is going to be us. Like, this is going to be us. I need to like really pay attention and like make sure that I'm staying on top of my doctors. And I don't know if it was self-fulfilling prophecy or,
no.
or
I think it's gut instinct / intuition. I think that's really interesting. Cool.
Yeah. So that fall I got off of birth control, had a visit with like I was seeing like a midwife. I didn't even have like a true OB. And we did like the genetic carrier screening just to make sure, because we're obviously like just analytical people. We wanted to do everything we could to like just minimize any risks.
Right.
They didn't even run any other blood work on me at the time. They were literally like, you're fine, you're young, you're healthy, get off the pill, give it a couple months for your body to kind of just figure things out. And then, I remember her saying like, you're gonna be pregnant in no time. And so
did you think that? Did you believe that?
I don't know what I believed. Like part of me was like scared to try unprotected because I'm like, oh, I am going to be the person that's going to get pregnant in no time. But then part of me was like, I had that feeling of like, well, it's going to be a lot harder than I think. And so I know when she said it, it was kind of like that, okay, well, we'll see feeling, like, we'll see. Maybe I will be, maybe I won't be. But at the same time, like while off the pill, every time, we had sex for the next couple of months, because it wasn't January 1st, right? Like that. I try, I was still scared, right? So like my period's 30 seconds late and I'm still freaking out, like,
right.
And it was just like, I think back to like, I was so naive, like I was so blissfully naive, but like, it was great,
But I think that's part of our culture too, is like, we're taught that it's so easy to become pregnant. And I think it's like the scared straight thing, like growing up. And I understand why they do that for high school kids and middle school kids and stuff. But it's just like, I think that everybody's has been taught that, it's so easy. It's so easy. Be careful, be careful. And that's just so not the reality.
Oh, I remember like in high school, there was a rumor of like, oh, you can get pregnant from like sitting on a toilet seat. Like all the things. And like, just, if only.
Exactly. Okay. So what happened next?
So January 1st hits, we're not pregnant. But this is like when we started like actively trying. So for the first couple of months, it was just like not, timed intercourse per se, but like we're banging it out and, there's no birth control, there's no condoms or anything like that. And just maybe it'll work. Nothing happened. So gosh, like April or May of that year, I called my OB and I'm like, this is kind of weird. Like, it's been a couple months, like what, do I need to worry? And she was like, no, like you've been on birth control at this point for close to 10 years. Your body probably just is like figuring things out, give it time. And she was the one who recommended doing like ovulation predictor kits. And so she was like, go and get like those clear blue predictor tests and, just see, like track your ovulation, missing your window. And so I did that. The first month I never caught a peak. And so I was like, well, maybe I just don't know what the hell I'm doing, because we're so quick to like assume that we're doing it wrong. And that's when I like started diving headfirst into like the TTC community, right?
Okay.
All the articles and like, what time of the day am I supposed to pee on these sticks? Like, is there a secret to them, and gosh, like in being introduced to the world of like line eyes and like people were doing all sorts of wacky stuff with like sending pictures of like their kits and is this a positive outcome?
Right.
Like I would never even think to like find a stranger on the internet and be like, look at this stick that I just peed on and what do you think? Like
Exactly. So were you in like Facebook groups and stuff or like Reddit or
it
Instagram or like
was
where were you looking?
initially it was like the Facebook group. So it
Uh-huh.
was I had joined two. I joined the first time TTC group. And then I joined like a 30 and over group. And so like the 30 and over group was all like IVF, IUI, and I'm like, oh, like that's not me. But the first time group was all, and it was so funny because it was like, the like, am I ovulating? Am I not
Right.
ovulating? But then you also have the like, is this pregnancy test positive? Like,
Mm.
and all of that. And so it was admittedly like those first couple of months, it was really fun. Like I loved being in the group because I was just like in it, like these are my people. We're going
Mm-hmm.
together. But then like month after month after month, it started feeling really old. Like, hey, now I'm 4 months into doing this and it's
Right.
still not working. I'm 5 months into doing this. It's still not working. I'm 6 months into doing this. It's still not working.
Right. And can I ask you too, and you
Yeah,
don't have to say, but like, was the sex becoming like a chore or like, trying to like,
100%. Like it
okay.
got to the point where the first couple of months, it's like, ooh, like, let's do
Right.
some stuff,
Right.
like,
Let's make a baby.
and then it got to the point where it was like, okay, it's Tuesday,
Yeah.
like,
I'm
I'm
ovulating.
positive, like, we need to go now.
Yeah.
When there was no longer that, like, I mean, it got to the point where, like, I hit a point where I was like, screw the foreplay, screw all this, let's just screw me.
Yeah.
Like, let's just go. Um,
Totally.
and it was really grating on both of us. It's
Hmm.
exhausting. I think, you know, for me, it became very clinical, and I'm a pharmacist by nature. So it was
Right.
like, healthcare, like this is what we have to do. And like taking, all of the romance and everything out of it. I didn't even really realize for a long time how much it had affected like our relationship
Hmm.
because sex became something that it wasn't fun.
Hmm.
Wasn't it wasn't something that we were like dreading per se, but like it got to a point where it was just like, oh, is it time? Like, kind of,
Yeah. There's nothing sexy about it. It takes all the sexiness out of it and all the romance and all the good stuff. And it's just like, let's do this. And it's awful.
yeah, it's like, I'm gonna take my pants off, let's go.
Yeah.
Like
I
that's
remember
kind
one time to Vince, I was like, just stick it in. And he was like sweating and I'm like crying. And it was like, oh my God, what is happening to us?
of,
So bad.
yeah. So we, kept going. And all this time, like 3, 4 months in, to the OPKs, like I still wasn't getting a positive.
Hmm.
I still wasn't even catching like a line. It was always just like the one line. And you know how you're supposed to see like the two. I never even saw the second one.
Hmm.
So I like had done the expensive clear blues. I'd done the Amazon cheapies, like
Hmm.
a whole bunch of them, thinking that maybe it was just like the test itself that I had bought. And that's when I started really kind of getting to be, frustrated, but then also recognizing that I was going to have to advocate for myself. And so I'd called my doctor and I was like, hey, like, I'm not even getting 2 lines. Like, forget not catching the positive. That's a timing thing. Like, I'm not even getting 2 lines. There's something going on.
Hmm.
Um, and in hindsight, right, like my OB, she was like the worst because she was like, oh, you're fine, you're fine. She kept kind of like pushing it off, like, you're young, you're healthy, it'll happen. Um, and I kept pushing, and they finally got me in that fall. And she still wouldn't do like a full like infertility workup per se. She just like checked my progesterone, and I think she checked like one other level basically to like look for PCOS.
Why do you
And
think she wouldn't do it?
I don't know, actually, like she's not my OB anymore.
Hmm.
I think, she left the clinic probably within a year of me actually like starting to be seen by her. My guess is that she was just kind of checked out, honestly.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and if you're not actively like she's an OB-GYN, right? So if you're not actively pregnant, like why are you wasting my time kind of deal.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
but she kept pushing it off. And, initially, like, it was just kind of like, well, maybe she's right. Like, she's a doctor, she knows, and I should trust her.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always this part of me that's like, but like something doesn't feel right. So she did her PCOS workup and everything came back normal, right?
Okay.
That stuck out to her. But one thing that was interesting is that she caught my progesterone showed that I had ovulated. So she's like, you are ovulating. So just keep going. Like, it might be that the first 6 to 8 months or whatever that you were trying, like, you weren't ovulating, but your body's definitely doing it now.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like just enough for me to hold on to, like, okay, all right, 8 months we were trying, but we weren't really trying because I wasn't ovulating, but now I'm ovulating.
But now it's going to happen, right? Yeah.
And so it was just like, let's go, let's fucking go, know? And I like to swear.
Oh, 100%.
All right.
You're asking me, Payal.
So it kind of gave me that renewed, like, motivation, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, I remember the next couple of months, it was like, again, back to that excited feel of like, okay, now I know I'm ovulating. Like, this is going to work for us. I wasn't ovulating before, but now I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kept trying. And she had said, give it probably another like 6 months or whatever it was from the time that she'd done all the workup. So, we're trying, still nothing. Like, we're still, each month, it's like that pregnancy test is, either I'm not taking it because I'm getting my period at like 24 days or 26 days, or like I'm late, but like it's just plain, right? Like no line, no hint of a line. I don't even know that I ever got to a point where I was squinting, like maybe there's something there. No, like it was just very obviously negative. And then, I set up that appointment in March of 2020, which is when 6 months from when my blood work was for the initial kind of like PCOS workup.
Mm-hmm.
That's when everything shut down.
Right.
So she, when I called and I was like, I'd made the appointment I think in January of that year. And I was like, really gearing up for it. In March, everything shut down. The clinic called me and they're like, we're canceling your appointment. This is considered elective. You don't need to be coming in and, seen at this point. And so I had demanded to talk to her to kind of figure out, like, what do we do in the meantime? And her response was, well, everything's going to open up in, probably another 6 weeks or so. So we'll just kind of keep pushing your appointment. But in the meantime, keep trying. And at this point, we've been, just in terms of timed intercourse going for, what did that end up being, like a year and a half?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Year and a half. And
sorry, are you seeing people around you that were trying, the started at the same time, like friends getting pregnant and all that stuff and dealing with all that shit?
I got lucky in that most of my friends weren't in that space yet. So I didn't have anybody in my like personal life that was like not babies, but like people I'd connected to in the Facebook group, right? Like were not only pregnant, but like now, giving birth, because they had, made it all the way. So it was kind of tough to see that, tough to see kind of that like random stranger that you connected with 1 month over, OPKs and am I positive or not? Now it's like they're having their baby boy or their baby girl.
Right.
Unassisted, essentially, there weren't a lot of people at this point that were going through treatments yet.
Uh-huh.
And so, and I, part of it was, I just don't think I'd like looked into the space. Right. So it was just kind of like on the main page, let's take a look at tests. And that was pretty much it. But yeah. So, a couple more months of trying, which just felt like Groundhog Day at this point,
Totally.
Same thing over and over.
Were you feeling any sort of like depression or anything like that? Because I'll say personally, I got really depressed when it wasn't working for me.
Anger, frustration.
Okay.
Throughout all of this, like Ron and I were doing pretty good ourselves.
Yeah.
Like there was this sense of like, what is going on? And it was, almost approaching it from the perspective of like a puzzle of like, there's clearly something that's going on. We just need to figure out what it is. And then like that frustration of like, why the hell isn't my doctor taking it seriously?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was never, I think up until that point, like I never had internalized it as like, you know, I'm failing or anything like that. It was more just like, we're going to figure this out. We just haven't gotten to that point yet.
Right.
But I think kind of that timing with COVID in a way worked out to our benefit because we were so distracted with like what is happening in this world.
Right. Like the world is coming to an end.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It's like, well, maybe, maybe the world's going to end before we get to this point and we won't have to worry about like being pregnant in the middle of like the plague, basically.
Right. Exactly.
So I think it helped to serve as a distraction.
Uh-huh.
I imagine actually having to be on like that forced break without a pandemic would have been pretty miserable.
Right. So when did you get to the point where you guys decided to do that?
That fall, once things opened back up, with my OB's office, this is the original terrible OB.
Okay.
Did a Clomid cycle and it didn't take, so it didn't work. And right when that was happening is I think when she left the practice, so they switched me over to a different OB in the same practice. She took one look at my files and was like, oh, we need to refer you. Like, this is insane.
Oh, wow.
So she ran my AMH and she ran a couple of other levels. Everything came back normal. And she's like, this makes no sense to me. Like, based on what I see in your blood work, your age, your health, all of the things, you should be pregnant. Like, you shouldn't be, almost 2 years in at this point.
Yeah. Did that feel good to hear that? Because then you're like, okay, now something's happening and maybe we can find some answers.
So validating to hear her, kind of say like, no, there is something going on. We're going to figure it out. So she actually recommended my current RE. They had gone to like med school together or something. And she's like, I know this person. She's great. You're going to love her. She's super smart. And I, again, was at a point where like I hadn't researched anything. And so I was like, well, okay, I trust, I trust you. And so I didn't even look into other clinics in the DFW area. I was like, well, we'll meet with them. If I like, don't like it, we'll do some more research. And if I like it, we'll stay. And so we did, I reached out, we got a consult pretty quickly. I was actually very surprised. And just in talking to her, she's like, yep, we're going to run a bunch of blood work. We're going to, and she had a plan, like 2 minutes into our conversation, we're going to run a bunch of work. We're going to see what it says. And then we're starting IUIs. Like, we think that, we need to get your ovaries going. We need to force that ovulation. We're going to check his sperm and we're going to, get you the best sperm we possibly can. And I was like, all right, let's do this.
Yes. And again, were you like, okay, now we're going to get pregnant? Like,
yes. And that was exactly it. Like, that was, that kind of like punch that I needed of like, okay, we can do this. And so we did all the initial blood work, for both run. Well, for me, he did like the sperm analysis. Everything came back normal. So at this point, we are officially unexplained infertility. And our first IUI was in September of 2020.
2020. Okay.
Yeah, 2020. So our first IUI, and what we learned is that my body did not respond to the meds the way she expected them to. So I had an AMH of like 3.6, 3.7, something like that, almost 4. And she, based on my age, would have expected me to be making pretty good sized follicles in like the 3 to 5 of them. Cycle, I had 1. And so that was when she was kind of like, well, you don't respond to the meds as I would have expected, like I thought you'd be just dropping eggs left and right, but you're not. So she bumped me up. I was on letrozole, like, what is it, 7.5 milligrams, like the highest.
Oh, wow.
And I was on the 7.5 and like nothing was happening. Like, I had sleepy little ovaries. They were just, she called them stingy.
Were you
Yeah.
like, thanks, that makes me feel great?
Yeah, right. And it's like, well, okay, this explains now part of why it hasn't been working, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I've got stingy ovaries.
Mm-hmm.
That's explaining part of it. And, she was like, well, we're going to get you there. And so, we would, the first IUI, we did the Femara, triggered with Avidrel, and, on IUI day, like everything, she's like, it looks good. Like, his numbers are good.
Mm-hmm.
Buckle was a pretty good size. I think it was like 18 or 19 at the time. She's like, that's pretty good where we want it. So let's just see what happens. And at my clinic, with IUIs, they don't have you come in for beta. So they just, you either wait till your period or you take a pregnancy test.
Oh, wow. Okay. Did they tell you 2 weeks or 10 days or like how long after?
It was 14 days. So
14 days.
Exactly 2 weeks.
Oh my God. Brutal.
Dreaded a full
Totally.
2 weeks.
That's like a full on 2-week wait. So what did you do to get through that time?
It was, the first one, it wasn't too bad. Like
Okay.
I'd been doing the 2-week wait for so long that it was just like, this is just, more of it. I didn't really treat it any different than any other 2-week wait that I had done. I wasn't symptom spotting. I wasn't
Mhm.
like, I think at this point, I wasn't even really talking to people going through it. It was just business as usual. Like, I think, I remember we went for a walk and I felt like that heaviness that you feel after you ovulate, like a big follicle. And I was like, oh man, like this is what ovulation feels like. I have not felt this for the last, 2 years. Like something is different.
Yeah. Did you feel hopeful?
I felt hopeful. I was curious to kind of see what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of, got to it. And on the day, so this was with the IUIs. The one thing that I did struggle with was like the last like 3 or 4 days of the 2-week wait, where it was like, okay, like now I'm like, do I feel the cramping? Do I feel the, anything like that? And I just kind of like power through it. So with my first IUI, I woke up at like 6 a.m. It's a Saturday.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I got to pee on a stick. And
right.
Like, I'd even gotten the nice pregnancy test for once.
Ooh, the fancy ones with the words.
Oh yeah. Like the ones that you're like paying an arm and a leg for.
Totally.
And I took the test, negative. And I was just like, ugh. And then that thought happened. Well, maybe it's just delayed a day or two, right? Like I don't feel cramping. I don't feel anything that's signifying my period's coming. So maybe the IUI was just like, it didn't do what it was supposed to, but the sperm and the egg met and something happened. So I got back into bed, and I was like, okay, I'll try again tomorrow. Like, I'm not going to call them. I'll try again tomorrow. Maybe it'll be positive tomorrow.
Okay.
And then like 3 hours later, my period started. So that was like miserable, right? Like
yes.
crushing.
What a punch to the gut, to the heart, to the everything,
to
the ovaries.
Punch the ovaries.
Yeah.
But, I don't know why. I just had this thought of like, we learned something with this cycle. So we're moving in the right direction. And my RE, like after I called them to let them know, like I had my period, she was like, all right, this is what we're going to do. And for the next cycle, we're going to do everything exactly the same. But I'm just changing up the timing of when you do your letrozole, so that we can try to get that follicle nice and mature. But we're moving in the right direction. And she was super hopeful and super like in it, that you can't help but to buy in, right? Like when your doctor's like, I got your back, right?
Yeah.
Like, be like, okay, like if you believe in me,
you're the expert. Yeah.
So our second one, I think the follicle got a little bit bigger, but it was kind of the same situation where took the pregnancy test, it was negative, and that one hurt. That was probably the first time in the entire time that we had been trying that I like laid in bed and just sobbed and cried and
Mm-hmm.
why me?
Yeah, 100%. I know the feeling. Oh, I'm sorry.
Ugly thoughts of like, why can that bitch get pregnant and I can't?
Totally. That fucking
Like,
bitch. Yeah.
uh,
All those bitches.
all of them, right? Like the crackheads, the
Yes.
don't want the kids, and all of it, and it all just crashed. I mean, up until that point, every negative test, every period, it had been like, oh, this sucks, but I'm gonna get up and get on with my life. But this one, I wallowed in bed for hours that morning.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do it. It was
Mm-hmm.
exhausting. I was at wit's end. And I think it was probably the first time that Ron had recognized like how much I had kind of been like compartmentalizing it. And so he's rubbing my back and I don't even know that he knew what to say. And he usually knows what to say. Right. So it was just one of those like, shit, like this is our reality
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
There's not, where do you go from here? And that was the day that I was like, I'm going to do this one more time. And if it doesn't work, we're doing IVF. Like I told you, we're supposed to save money. We didn't, but we're going to make this thing work.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the day that he pulled out all of his insurance paperwork and looked up, like, do we have coverage and how are we going to make this work? And so, that was the start of kind of like I mean, it felt like a roller coaster to get to that point, but like,
Yeah. But now this is like the big leagues, right? It's like
it was the big leagues, but it
yeah.
felt real.
Yeah.
We're
Next
not just
phase.
like,
Did you guys have coverage?
he did.
He did. Okay.
Did. So what we needed to do was the timing of it worked out pretty well because he was in his open enrollment. So what we needed to do was switch me to his insurance. At that point, we were still kind of carrying our own. So for January of 2021, he added me onto his insurance. And so it was kind of one of those things where it's like, well, the stars at least aligned that we were able to get me switched over when open enrollment happened rather than having to like wait or figure something out later. So that Monday I called my clinic. I let them know like, hey, it was negative. I want to do one more IUI and then we're moving to IVF. And my RE was not for it. She was like, you've got a couple more cycles in you. Like, I think we're going to figure it out. And I was like, no, like, it's not working. Like, what do we need to do to get to that point? And so she's like, okay. So she did for my third IUI, it was still the Femara. She's like, we're going to add on a steroid. We'll still do the Avidrel injection, but we're going to, that steroid I think will help. And I was like, okay, I also want the IVF consult. And she's like, Payal, just wait. And I was like, no, like I refuse.
Why did she want you to wait, do you think?
She thought that she could get it, and she definitely like, it's her personality, very much glass half full. Like, we're going to get you there. I have faith in your body. I have faith in you. I have faith in the protocol.
Right.
And so
in your field, sorry to interrupt, but like, in the pharmaceutical field, did you have like kind of insight into like, maybe I should try this drug, or were you like going rogue at all in terms of the protocol or what you wanted to do? No.
Nope. I'm a rule follower.
Okay. Gotcha.
I had actually, I had kind of started to look into the drugs, but like, it was just, there's so much, right, with the different protocols and everything. I was like, I don't trust myself more than I trust this person who has studied all of this stuff for years, right? Who am I to go rogue? That changed eventually.
Right.
But
yeah.
at that point, I was still very much like, she tells me to do this, I'm going to do it. Exactly how she says. So she did eventually agree. She said, they scheduled my IVF consult during the 2-week wait. So the plan was, right, in her mind, she's like, we're going to do that consult and then we're going to have a plan for IVF and then it's going to work. because that's how life is, right? And I was like, gosh, I hope you're right, Dr. Reed.
Yeah.
And so we did the IUI. And it was just like from the beginning, it was like a cluster. Like I got my period over Thanksgiving. So it was like, well, instead of, starting on day 3, I had to start on day 5 because the clinic was closed. And I was like, this isn't even going to work. Like I schedule that IVF consult because I'm not wasting my time with this anymore. On baseline, my lead follicle was already at like 11. So she was just like, holy shit. And I'm like, well, does this mean we're not going to do it? And she's like, no, you're going to do the letrozole. We're going to monitor you. She had me come in a little bit sooner. We did the IUI and everything. And I went into that 2-week wait, assuming it wasn't going to work, because why would it? So the IVF consult, she talked about their timing, how they kind of do all of the blood work and everything ahead of time and kind of what that would look like. We talked about timing with insurance. So she said, we can start everything in January. That way everything goes towards deductible for next year. And if it all works out, right, like you'll be having your baby at the end of the year and you'll still have met your deductible and it'll be like the least expensive option for you. And I'm like, that's so cute that she thought that that's how it was going to be. But like, we had a plan, like we had a really good plan.
Right.
And on December the 21st was pianistic day. And I had my first squinter. So at this point, I had joined Rally and I'd met a girl through Rally that we had been like texting and stuff. And so it's like 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m. Like we adopted Buddy a few weeks before. So I'm out in the backyard, like watching him like a hawk because I was sure he was going to run away. And, like I peed that morning and like I wasn't sure if it was a smudge or not. And it like kept bothering me.
Yeah.
Texting her like, hey, is it awkward? Like, I know how shitty it is when people do this now, right? Like now. But like, I don't know what to do. And she's like, text me a picture. And I'm like, are you sure? Because she's kind of going through treatments and stuff. And so I was like, are you sure? Like, I don't want you to feel like uncomfortable about it. And she goes, no, send me a picture. And so I sent her a picture and she like texts back a couple minutes later. She's like, I think I see something.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, but like, it's super faint, right? Like, I mean, I'm like, when you're like squinting and then like tilting your head, like
totally. And like trying to, getting closer and then further away. And like,
And so she's like, do this. And it was like the best advice I could have gotten that day. She's like, don't drink any more water for the next couple of hours. Try again around lunchtime and see what happens. And, I'm thinking, well, it's going to come back just completely negative, but whatever, we'll try it. Like, I'm not going to call my clinic just yet that I'm out. So at lunch, I peed on another stick and it was still very faint. But it was clearly like there was something there. I didn't even really have to like do the, the head tilts and stuff. And so I walked into Ron's office. He just finished up a call and I'd like threw the stick on his desk. I'm like, we're pregnant.
Oh my God.
Which was like not at all how I had envisioned, telling him the first time. One of
you didn't picture just throwing it at him.
No, I was like, we're pregnant, look, and he was just like, oh, like, what do we, what do we do? And I'm like, oh crap, like I have to call my clinic and tell them, like, because I didn't even know what the protocol was. It's like, I had never even thought about it. So I called, and they were like, oh, why are you calling me now? Like, you should have called me this morning. And I'm like, well, this morning it wasn't very positive, but now it's a little bit more positive. And I'm sure the like receptionist thought I was insane. Like, what is this girl doing? So they sent me to a LabCorp for like a beta. And so like at 4:00 after I wrap up with work, I'm driving to LabCorp and, that's when the exciting jitters kind of like hit, right? Like, holy shit, like I'm getting a blood test to confirm a pregnancy. Like, what?
Right.
So I didn't know at all like how long this is going to take. So I'm thinking like I get my, magic pile brain. Like I'll get my blood work done at 4 and they'll call me at like 6 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Uh-huh.
So like I got my blood work done and then like could not, I was like the pit in my stomach, like super excited. Like,
Oh yeah.
don't think I slept at all. The next morning, I'm like checking my phone constantly. Like I think I'd like drained my battery down to like 50% by 8 a.m. because I kept checking it.
Right.
Um, and I got the call a little after lunch, and it was the nurse who called me, and she, started out by saying, well, congratulations, you're pregnant, but your beta's at an 8.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like didn't know what that meant. And the but was kind of like that, like, oh, like when they say that. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And she said, your doctor is concerned was the word that they use. Like it is positive, you are pregnant, but your doctor is concerned. So we're going to have you go back and we're going to have you do another test to see, and she kind of explained to me, like, we're looking for it to more or less double. I Googled and kind of looked up, like, okay, what does this mean? Right? Like, what does this mean? No, it wasn't 8. Sorry, it was 15.
Okay.
I'm getting the two ends of beta health confused. It was 15.
Yeah.
So I Googled, beta 15, what does that mean? And like, kind of saw both ends, right? Like it's not going to work. You're going to miscarry, or, hey, like I had a beta of 12 and like my, that baby is like sitting in my arms right now. And I
Exactly.
chose to like continue to read the ones where it's like the baby's in my arms, or I'm 25 weeks, or,
Right. Yeah. You hear stories on either that go either way for sure.
Yeah. And I just was like, well, this is going to be our miracle baby. Like this is, our beta 15. It's going to keep doubling.
Yep.
So I got my second beta done. It was the 23rd. And like an idiot, like I just assumed that, medical professionals keep coming into work even though it's Christmas. I didn't get the results back till the following Monday.
Oh God.
Because our like LabCorp was closed and then our clinic was closed. And I was like, losing my shit, Allie.
That's
I was
brutal.
every day, like out of my mind, like what is happening?
Yeah.
So eventually I get a call and it had gone up to 26. So almost double, but not enough. But in my mind, I was like, well, it almost doubled. Like we're getting there. We're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
But that started beta hell for me. So I was getting betas done 2 to 3 times a week. And they were all kind of doubling or close to doubling, where, with every test, it was like, we're getting there, things are happening. And
did you feel like it was like just enough to keep you hanging on, like a little bit of hope, but like also at the same time, it's so brutal?
It was, I don't even know that there, like hope was so far out of the equation. It was just, I just need to know what the heck is happening in my body.
Gotcha.
Immensely frustrating, like immensely. I was probably like the bitchiest I've been in a very long time. I'm the person that's always like, the front desk people, it's not in their control. Be nice to them. Don't yell at them. And I was like yelling at her.
Right.
Get the damn nurse. But it was still going up, right? So like we're still in it. And I was measuring, I should have been measuring about 6 weeks is when they pulled me in for my first sonogram. And for the sonograms, they have like their head nurse do it, not the doctor. And so she's got Wanda up there looking at everything, and there is nothing. So there was no gestational sac, there was no yolk sac, there was nothing.
Oh, sorry.
So she was just like, let me get the doctor. The doctor came in and she's like, well, based on where your betas are, like maybe you're just measuring behind. But we're not out just yet because my betas were still going up. So they had me come back a week later, and this time there were like these blobs that they couldn't quite confidently call it a gestational sac, but they couldn't say it wasn't. And so she's like, we're just going to watch it. We're just going to watch it. And that was kind of when I started freaking out about ectopic pregnancy. Cause I was like, at this point, like we should be able to see something somewhere.
Had they mentioned that to you at all?
No,
were they worried about that?
So they weren't worried about it just yet. I think my betas were low enough that they just kind of assumed that stuff hadn't started to form. And they had mentioned that there's a chance we miscarry, but they hadn't mentioned ectopic at all. And the week between that sonogram and the following sonogram was when like all hell broke loose for me. Like emotionally, I couldn't keep it together anymore. I called and more or less cussed out my nurse. And I was like, I might be having an ectopic pregnancy. Like I could die, right? I could die. And I think that's when it hit her like, holy shit, like she's serious, right?
Yeah.
So she apologized. And then my doctor actually called, my RA called me back and she was like, okay, like, I didn't want to go through all of these other options because I didn't want to scare you. And I was like, doc, like, I'm already scared, right?
Yes. I'm shitting my pants.
Like talked me through, she's like, it could be an ectopic. This is why I don't think it's an ectopic. There's something called a molar pregnancy. This is why I don't think it's. So she walked me through her logic. Okay. We had a really good conversation at that point where I was like, just give it to me straight. Like, do not sugarcoat it. Do not, from here on out, like, this is what I'm asking for. And as ugly as the conversation was, right, to get to that point, like, I'm really glad that we did. Because she, from that point forward was very much like, this is kind of where we are. And this is kind of what we're looking for. So she, that conversation, she told me, she's like, I'm pretty sure you're going to end up miscarrying, but because your betas keep going up, we can't stop your medication. Like your body is saying it's pregnant. But because we haven't seen anything, it's really concerning. So we're just going to keep an eye on it and, we'll kind of go from there. The next appointment, the next sonogram we had, I got in and I'm fully expecting nothing to be there, just like the last one. My doctor was the one who did my scan, and she immediately, like, we could tell something was different. Like all the little blobs I was mentioning, they were gone. And I had one blob, with my gestational sac. She kind of did the zoom in thing, and we saw not just a fetal pole, we saw a heartbeat.
Oh my God. How many weeks was this?
I was 8 weeks at this point. Okay. Yeah, I was 8 weeks at this point. Baby was measuring at 6. She's like, holy shit, like you've got a heartbeat, and I was like, oh my God, Oh
my God. What a 180.
It was just, right? Yeah. Like, what is happening?
Yeah. What is happening?
So in that moment, I asked her, I'm like, are we good? And she goes, well, you're measuring far behind, very far behind. But the fact that you went from not really having much of anything to now not only having a obvious gestational sac, an obvious fetal pole, and a heartbeat, like we had hope. And I was just like, all right. So we went home. Ron and I cried. We called our parents because, again, naive, like pregnancy, like, oh my God, we're pregnant.
Yeah. I don't blame you though. It's like, finally some good news.
Yeah. And it was, we were guarded still, right? So we were still, it's early. We've had these issues. The doctor's still watching carefully, but we're there. And the following week I went back and there was no longer a heartbeat. So that was, I would have been 9 weeks at that point. And not only was there no longer a heartbeat, like my body had already started kind of breaking down everything. And so we went from, the week before, like overjoyed and super excited and happy to like, now what?
Yeah. I'm
And
so sorry.
thank you. Just like having the conversation about like, where do we go from here?
Mhm.
And try to let my body kind of naturally miscarry. It wouldn't. And so then my doctor was like, well, you can either do a DNC or you can do Cytotec. And I was terrified of surgery. So I was like, well, I'll do the Cytotec. And like, just to kind of give you a glimpse into who I am as a person, like, I was like, can we time it so that it's after like my busy period at work?
Oh, yeah.
And, it was like, yeah, like I don't, have any fears of like, having an infection or anything. So whatever works for you. Texted my boss like, hey, on February the 3rd, I'm going to be having a miscarriage. And she like called me back. She's like, what?
Oh, God.
And I was like, yeah, I just needed you to know that I was probably going to take like Thursday and Friday off.
Oh, Pyle, you're so sweet.
But like, she was just like, take a week. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, no, that's
Yes.
my work stuff. And she's like, you're insane. Like,
Did she know you were going through any of this stuff? Okay.
yeah, so she had known, and it was on a fluke. Like, it wasn't that I called her about it. She had known that we'd kind of been in beta hell because one day she called me for a work thing, and I was like, I'm on my way to my clinic for blood work. Like, can this wait? And she's like, blood work? Like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going through this. And she was like, oh, like, I'll leave you alone. She was super great about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I ended up doing like the 4 Cytotec pills up my hoo-ha.
Okay.
And then just kind of waiting. It started working pretty quickly, like within an hour or two. And like over the next day, I had ended up passing all of the tissue.
Mm-hmm.
And so once that happened, we were in this kind of waiting game of getting my betas back down to essentially negative. But that kind of prompted the conversation with my RE. She's like, yes, I agree. Like, given your age, miscarriages, it can happen, but it shouldn't have, right? Like it's pretty rare to see them in somebody your age. So there's clearly something going on. Like, I think IVF is the right way to go, which, again, it's like, well, I told you so.
Mm-hmm.
And then something that had not really been on our radar that she brought up was, what are your thoughts on doing PGT testing? Because the most common reason for an early miscarriage like that is chromosomal abnormalities.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, like obviously I don't ever want to go through that again.
Yeah.
So let's do it, right? And she's like, all right, we're just going to monitor you back down to 0, and then we'll be able to start kind of your prep for your egg retrieval.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd had the conversation about like, the percentages. She's like, with your age and your health and your status and everything, like, I don't even remember what she told me. It was like high 70% that the first cycle works, and like high, mid 90% for the second. And she's like, and if you even need to get to a third, it's like basically a guarantee at this point. Like,
wow.
She's so confident.
Yeah.
So it took us about 2 months for my betas to come back down. It took a while.
Mm-hmm.
And we started, egg retrieval prep. So it was, all of the blood work and, surprise, I don't have any STDs because like I haven't had sex with anybody other than my husband in how many years at this point. All the stuff that they've got to check their boxes, right? Did all the testing. And then we did our first round of stims in April of 2021. That egg retrieval, we got 12 eggs, 10 were mature. I think like 6 of them fertilized. We had 2 blasts. Only one of them was normal. And she, we had almost like a what the fuck after that. Cause she was, I was going to drop like, 20 eggs.
Right.
AMH and everything, and I didn't. And she was like, well, it's those stingy ovaries again. Like they
Oh
just
God.
they don't want to drop eggs. But then the other thing that we had learned is that I had really bad egg quality. So, the embryologist had kind of given, she said like they were really grainy and like didn't look super healthy. And my RE was like, yeah, I'm looking at that drop off for your fertilization numbers. Like I'm kind of thinking the same thing. You've got bad egg quality. And so at this point, I'm like deep in Rally, right? So I'm hearing all we'll talk about like the different supplements and everything. I brought that up, and she, was very much like, if you want to do it, you can. The studies kind of go both ways, right? There's studies that show that it works. There's studies that show that it doesn't. So she doesn't recommend kind of as a blanket for everybody, because she's like, I'm not going to have everybody spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on supplements that may or may not work.
This episode is brought to you by Higher Dose. You guys, I recently tried out the coolest product, something I've never used before, but I've been dying to try, and I keep reading about them everywhere. It was a Higher Dose sauna blanket, and it does all this incredible stuff. It elevates your body's thermal energy, it enhances deep relaxation, and it promotes glowing skin and improves your circulation. It's super easy to use. All you have to do is lay down inside the blanket, turn up the heat, and sweat it out. And it gives you all the benefits of a large, expensive sauna, but with less of a budget and less space. So I used it the other day after a SoulCycle class that totally kicked my ass, because the infrared heat helps with post-workout muscle recovery. And it does all these other things too. Some of the benefits are like it improves your circulation, helps bring out your inner glow, promotes restful sleep, improves your mood. And the cool thing, the reason it's called Higher Dose is because the dose, the DOSE in Higher Dose, stands for dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. Those are all the brain's happy chemicals that are released from both infrared and from sweating. So guess what? Not only was I feeling so thrilled that I was indulging in this self-care that I'd never done before, I did sleep like a baby that night, and I woke up feeling great. My muscles weren't sore or anything. I felt awesome. So a few cool things about this blanket. They offer payment plans starting as low as $50 a month, and they also offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. So for anybody who is into wellness and self-care, I urge you to try it. You can get your own today at higherdose.com, and you can use the promo code INFERTILEAF at checkout to save 15% off. That's HIGHERDOSE.com/InfertileAF, or just go to higherdose.com/InfertileAF and save 15% off. Thanks, Higher Dose. This episode is sponsored by Otherworld plant-based baking mixes made with hidden fruits and veggies. The other morning, guys, Sunny and I were craving pancakes, and so we tried this new brand called Otherworld, which makes healthy pancakes, waffles, and brownies. All of Otherworld's mixes are chef-crafted and plant-based, made with hidden fruits and veggies and no added sugar. Another cool thing about Otherworld is that they use upcycled ingredients in all of their mixes to help tackle food waste. So here's what happened in my household. I took out the Otherworld pancake mix, I added water, and that was it. Sunny and I really enjoyed them. They were really tasty, and he had no idea how nutritious his delicious pancakes were either. You guys, I love pulling the wool over his eyes in the name of health. Next, we can't wait to try the brownie mix, which has hidden sweet potato, beetroot, and dates, and the apple cinnamon pancake mix, which has hidden sweet potatoes, apples, and dates. Otherworld's mission is to reimagine childhood favorites and to make healthy eating fun. They've got a clean label, no added sugar, no nuts, no soy, and no dairy, and they're super easy to make. As I said before, all you have to do is add water. If you'd like to try Otherworld, and I have no idea why you wouldn't want to try it, here's the deal. From now until December 31st, Otherworld is offering my listeners, all of you guys, an exclusive discount of 25% off. So head to eatotherworld.com and use my code INFERTILEAF at checkout. That's code INFERTILEAF at eatotherworld.com to get the best deal of the year. Thanks, Otherworld. This episode is sponsored by Armoire. If you guys are anything like me, you don't even know how to get dressed anymore. Like, what are normal clothes and what am I supposed to wear when I go out into the world? I look in my closet and it's full, but I literally have nothing to wear. Enter Armoire. Armoire allows you to rent high-end designer clothing for every occasion. Whether you're heading to a holiday party, a work event, or need a gown for like a fancy function, like a wedding or something, you can be the best dressed person in the room, honestly. And you can do it without ever having to brave a fitting room. Here's what happened recently when I signed up for Armoire. I took a style quiz online, and based on my preferences, they offered clothing suggestions. So I could either go with their suggestions or I could search for specific things on my own. I picked 6 things and I got my case just a few days later in the mail, and I had all 6 things in it: a floral dress, a blazer, a fun sequin top, some leather pants, a sweater, and a sparkly black tie or wedding dress. It was so fun trying it all on in my own room with my own lighting, and I'm actually wearing the dress tomorrow when I go to a dinner party. Another awesome thing about Armoire is that it's women funded and women led, and you guys know how much that means to me. So the coolest part is right now, Infertile AF listeners can give Armoire a try and get up to 50% off their first month. That's up to $125 off. All you have to do is go to armoire.style/infertileaf. So that's spelled ARMOIRE.style/infertileaf, and you get up to 50% off your first month. Try Armoire today, and you never have to worry about what to wear again. Again, it's armoire.style/infertileaf for up to 50% off. Thanks, Armoire.
And so, when we started talking about next steps, I told her, I'm like, I want to have multiple kids. I think, she was like, do we want to just transfer the one embryo you have? And I was like, oh, I want to have multiple kids. Like, I'm not getting any younger. My eggs are already crappy quality. Like, doesn't it make sense to get more out now? And so she was like, all right. So we did a second egg retrieval in July of that year. Slightly different protocol. Like, she had added Clomid and done a couple of different other things, and essentially had the same outcome. So we had 10 eggs this time. 8 of them matured. I think all of them fertilized. We ended up with 5 blasts, but only 1 normal. So she was like, hey, like, that's good. Like, we got more blasts. And I'm like, but we only got 1 normal. Like, that's,
Right.
But at that point, I was a little bit burnt out on egg retrievals.
Yeah.
So in September of that year, we transferred.
Okay.
Didn't take it all. And so now we're down to 1 normal embryo. And I kind of was like, okay, well, we're going to do another egg retrieval, but I also want to make sure that we're doing all of the things before we transfer again. And so at Rally Live, I had learned about like ERA, Emma, Alice, I remember having that conversation. I'm like, I want to do this. And she was like, and I was like, I'm going to do this. And she was like, all right, like, we'll do it. I don't know that we're going to find anything, but if it gives you peace of mind, like, it's worth it. So we did a 3rd egg retrieval in November. And this was like our balls to the walls egg retrieval. I mean, literally, like, I came with like, here's my list. So we did
the kitchen sink and like guns a-blazing. You're like, let's
I didn't even have like rationale for half of it, right? I was like, I want to do a steroid because I got pregnant on a steroid last week. So do a steroid. And
but it's that kind of thing, Payal, where like, you never know what's going to be the one thing, right? So it's like, if you've had success or of certain things, like, fuck yeah, at that point, you're going to try it all.
And she went for it. I give her all the credit in the world. She's like, all right, let's do it, and we ended up getting 18 eggs. I think like 16 of them were mature, but like 8 of them fertilized. So it's like, what the fuck is happening with my numbers right now? Like, there's no pattern. We ended up getting 4 normals and an inconclusive that cycle. So, it was just like that roller coaster of like, I have yet to have like a expected trend with all of my egg retrievals,
right?
With random shit.
Yeah.
But I remember she called me and she was just like, do you even want to go through all this testing? You've got plenty of embryos now. And I was like, girl, we fought a lot to get here. Like, I'm still all the testing. And she's like, all right, so let's do that. Like, let's do all of your biopsies, we'll do a hysteroscopy, we'll do it all. I don't think you need it, but we'll do it all, and then we'll transfer.
Mm-hmm. You're like, don't stop me now, girl. Like, we're on a roll.
There is no going back.
No.
So we did all of our testing. Everything came back normal. So again, like at this point, there's no reason that an embryo would not implant in my body. And we, it was just like, all right, as soon as we can, like we're gonna put one of those suckers in. So early 2022, we got all of our test results and everything back. And on the anniversary of my miscarriage is when I had to transfer.
Mm-hmm.
February 3rd of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Had my transfer, and on February 14th of 2022, we found out that not only did that little beam stick,
oh my gosh,
it stuck like my
no.
700.
What was it?
700 and something.
Wow.
And like the thought crossed my mind of like, did it split? Like,
yes,
data, especially compared to like the 15 I had previously.
Totally. Oh my gosh.
But like I didn't feel confident. Like I remember
it's so scary. Yeah.
Thinking like, well, 700 is a lot harder to double than 15. So like, what if it doesn't double? And my second beta came back at like 1700, so it more than doubled. And we didn't even do a third beta. Like she was just like, we don't need to.
She's like, you're good.
I got my first scan at 5 weeks, 5 days. They called and they were like, beforehand, like setting the appointment. She's like, I don't know that we'll see anything, but like, obviously with your history, like, let's get you in and make sure that things are forming the way they're supposed to. We saw our little baby's heartbeat at 5 weeks, 5 days. Cause
oh my gosh.
Like super overachiever.
Yep.
At this point, we didn't know it was a boy, actually. I had told him to put the best one in. And so we were like, we don't know if it's a boy or a girl. We were assuming it was a girl because I had more girls at that point.
What was that appointment like? Was Ron with you?
No, it was just me.
Okay. What was his reaction to that when you told him?
His reaction was cool, calm, and collected. Like, of course. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, yeah, of course you were going to see a heartbeat. Like, why wouldn't you?
Uh-huh.
Your numbers looked good. They told you that was good. They told you. And I was like, you're nuts. Like, bro, get excited.
Could you get excited, or was it still just like, holy shit, the stakes are so high and all that?
Yeah, like I felt like until there was this like memory in my head of at 8 weeks with my first pregnancy, that before that 8-week scan, my RE had said, at 8 weeks, they kind of look like a little gummy bear. Mm-hmm. And with this pregnancy, I was like, until I see that gummy bear, like, I don't believe it. Right. Because last time I had seen the flickering and then it went away. Mm-hmm. And so they had scheduled my 8-week scan, which was also going to be my graduation scan.
Okay.
And they had said Ron could come to that one. So that's what we had planned for.
Yeah.
Midway, so at 7 weeks, I was starting to spot.
Okay.
Like called them blind panic, like freaking out. Right.
Yeah.
They brought me back in. Everything looked good. They found an SCH, a subchorionic hematoma, and it was very, very small. So the nurse and my RE both were like, spotting's totally normal. We'll take you off the aspirin. I was on baby aspirin, so they took me off of it. And they're like, I'm not worried about it. My spotting was very faint and mostly dark. So they were like, it's just old blood. It's not anything that we're concerned about. And I kind of let it go, right? Like I was just like, okay, like this is just a part of the process with IVF. SCH is common. They're monitoring you a lot earlier. So maybe everybody has them, but like they're not coming in for scans this early.
Yes. So many Rally members have had them too.
And so many Rally members have had them more serious than mine, right? So I was like, well, I'm just like, it's just little dots, right? So I'm okay. It's not like it's like gushing of blood. Mm-hmm. So I'm okay. At 8 weeks, baby was exactly like you'd expect, a little gummy bear, right? They graduated us, lots of tears.
Yeah.
I remember distinctly saying, I'll see you guys in like 2 years, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'll see you guys in 2 years. Got in with my new OB. So I'm seeing a totally different doctor now. She herself has had IVF babies. And so she totally did it. That first appointment, Ron came with me for the scan, and we heard the heartbeat for the first time, and it was just magical. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just the best sound ever. And they were having me come in every 2 weeks until the end of the first trimester, and then every 2 weeks thereafter. So was going in, and had a textbook pregnancy, right? Like the symptoms that I didn't have terrible symptoms. I had nausea, food aversions, and that was pretty much it. I was still spotting on and off, but my OB did not seem really concerned with that. At, what is it, like 11 or 12 weeks, when she was like, oh yeah, and your nausea's going to get better. Like my nausea got better. My little baby app was telling me like, oh, you might be experiencing these symptoms. And I was experiencing those.
Oh my God. Did it feel strange to finally be on track with something? Like,
it felt good. Like
yeah.
it was like, this is like I'm in the textbook, right? Like,
right.
I am the normal pregnancy, and every appointment we had, it was like, this is the heartbeat, this is what it's supposed to be, and it's like spot on, right? So I was just I was feeling so good. We made it to 22 weeks before I had the anatomy scan. I was a little bit nervous about that, and the sonographer, she like walked me through it. The doctor came in, gave me all the measurements, and I was like, okay, but like, is my baby normal? And he's like, average. And that's like music,
all you want to hear.
right? Like, yeah, exactly. I don't need,
right.
like, I just want an average baby.
Yes. I feel like I remember that scan. I think you emailed us, because wasn't Ron out of town?
He was.
And so, you had like signed a member special date, and you were like, I'm really nervous about this one. And we were like, oh my God, we're here for you. Let us know how it goes. And I remember that.
So he was out of town, and MFM, they don't let you like FaceTime anybody in. So I was like really, really anxious about it. And it was just like, I'm pretty sure I cried when the doctor was like, average. And I was just like, oh, okay, all right. And they gave me like millions of pictures, and like, I was able to take video off my phone. She was like, I'm going to look the other way for this many, seconds. And if you were to pull out your phone and take a video, like, I won't know. And I was like, oh,
I love that.
I can do it. But it was amazing. In terms of just like hearing that everything was okay. At this point, we knew we were having a baby boy. We started brainstorming names, and I was building a registry, and letting myself get excited. And that was something that was really hard after the loss. It wasn't really until the end of my first trimester that I felt confident in being pregnant. Even though I knew that everything was progressing the way that the doctor said that it should, there was still always that kind of like, well, maybe at the next appointment, I'll feel more confident with this. Maybe at the next appointment, I'll feel more comfortable. So like, where my first pregnancy, we told our parents at like 6 or 7 weeks. With this one, we waited till almost 11. And then like, announcing to the world was like a whole different, like, I was like, I can't do it, but I have to do it, but I can't do it, but I have to do it.
Yeah, that's really hard, especially when you're you've been active in the Instagram community here with Payal Ponders. And, it's when you have to announce big things like that, it's tricky. You don't want to trigger anybody. You don't want to make anybody feel badly. You're also really nervous yourself. It's hard to figure out what to share. Did you find that too?
Yeah, I really struggled with it. Because like you said, I don't want anybody to feel hurt or victimized by it. But at the same time, I had made so many connections in that space that it also felt inauthentic to not say anything, right? With how many people were rooting for us and, on transfer day, the number of people that like put up a post wishing me luck, right? Like it's
Totally.
like all these people are rooting for me. And if I don't say anything, like, am I that asshole?
Right.
And so I finally did, like, I had the little sensitive post tag, and I was like, I shared in my caption, like, I don't know that I'm going to keep doing the sensitive post tag, but like, this is your kind of warning of like, if this is not right for you, you can mute, you can unfollow, like, whatever you need to do. I get it. And overall, I, was just floored by how amazing the community was. Most everybody not only showed up, but showed up big.
Everybody loves you, Payal. It's true. You're such a likable person.
At the moment, I was like, I'm that asshole. Well, I got pregnant. When nobody, like everybody else is having a hard time, but so many women, reached out and they were like, you give me hope.
Yeah.
You've been through it.
But you've also been there for other people as well. So, that's your reputation as well, as like always, what is everyone going through this week? How can I support you? How can I help you? You've always been there for other people. So it came back to you. That's natural.
It came back tenfold. I mean, I was literally that night that I put it on Instagram, like I was reading those comments and just crying because like, this baby boy, you always joke about like your Instagram aunties and stuff. He has real aunties. Like we can do a world tour and people will show up and like give him kisses and hugs. And it's just a testament to like everything that we've been through, right? In terms of just like, these are real connections. And so, it was one of those things where I put it all out there. I mean, people saw me really trying to lean in and really trying to embrace pregnancy, and talked a lot about pregnancy after loss. And I talked a lot about kind of some of the challenges that come with that, right? That feeling of you're never truly comfortable or confident that this is going to happen. But then also, you hit a point in your pregnancy where you start thinking it's going to happen. When I felt his kicks for the first time, or, when I think I'd shared this early on, I was like, what am I looking most forward to? Wearing maternity clothes. Like I wanted to be big.
Yeah.
And big, and being able to feel him.
Yeah.
And, once I hit those 2 points, I was like, wow, like this is real. And then it was like oh shit, like we're going to be bringing home a baby. Like,
yeah. There's so many phases.
Research. And so, it was, all of that played out in real time on Instagram. And like, that was me. It was raw. It was real. It's who I am. And it helped, right? It helped to kind of get it out. It helped to talk to people who had been through something similar. And it helped to educate people who hadn't, right? In terms of, hey, if you know somebody who's had a loss, like this is maybe the dialogue going on in their head. Don't assume they're okay just because they're pregnant now, because they're probably terrified. So yeah, that was, we got through most of the second trimester, 24 weeks of viability. We didn't do the half baked because I kind of was too tired and lost track of time. So I was like, well, at 24 weeks, we'll do something. And we, celebrated with pancakes and decaf coffee in the morning because I wasn't doing caffeine at this point, but it was like pancakes. And we had like, I think Cherish had posted like something with like fruity pebbles. And I was like, oh my God, I have to have fruity pebble pancakes. And so we made fruity pebble pancakes, and it was like sugar bomb to them. It was so good. And it happened to be a long weekend because it was 4th of July weekend. So it was like, we slept in, we like took it easy. There was no work, like none of that to worry about. And I was feeling good. I was feeling really good. And then July 4th happened. So that was 24 weeks and 2 days. Felt pretty good all day. I was having some cramping, but it was also like 105 degrees and I was probably dehydrated. So I didn't really think anything of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that night, I was packing for a trip. We were going to Phoenix for work. And in the middle of packing, like I was like, oh gosh, like you know, TMI warning for the listeners here. I was like, I gotta poop.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran to the bathroom. And even in that moment, it was like constipated pregnant lady, like, yes, I have to poop.
Right, right.
I don't want to be constipated on this trip in Phoenix, right?
Right.
So use the bathroom, and like immediately after passing a bowel movement, I passed what felt like a clot.
Yeah.
I knew that it was something different because it felt a lot like the clot I had passed when I was miscarrying.
Mm-hmm.
And so immediately my first thought was, I bet you this is the blood clot from the SCH. Let me catch it, call my doctor, and we can figure out what we are going to do next.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my hand in there, and as soon as my hand touched it, it did not feel like a clot. It felt like a sack full of fluid.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I hollered for one. And my super rational, wonderful husband put two and two together that, hey, she's in the bathroom. Every time she yells for me in the bathroom, it's because there's a bug. So he saunters in like, oh my God, it's probably like this big. And he walks in and he sees me on the toilet. Like, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on? And I was like, something's not right. And like, I mean, you could see just slow motion, right? He's like, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to call?
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as he said that, that sac burst and it's blood everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I just screamed like, yes, call 911.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes, he grabs his phone. He's on the phone with 911. A second, what felt like a clot started making its way down. I grabbed it thinking, oh my gosh, is this the baby?
Mm-hmm.
It popped. It was my water breaking. And so at this point, the person on 911, I mean, bless her. I don't know how she kept her cool because like he's yelling, I'm crying, I'm like hyperventilating, and she's like helping me breathe. And she's, like kind of, I mean, just hats off, like amazing.
Yeah.
And she asked me, she's like, are you able to get up and look in the toilet to see like how much blood is there? And I was sitting there, I'm like, I'm not getting up. Like if I get up, this baby's coming out. Like,
yes.
And she's like, okay, no, don't do it. Don't do it. Like, just stay there. The EMTs are on their way.
Okay.
They got there really quickly, like within 10 minutes.
Wow.
And so they came in, the first thing the one EMT said was like, are you able to stand up? And I was just like, I'm not doing it. Like, you're going to have to like cut this toilet out. I'm coming with the toilet. Right. And he's just like, no, we're going to get you. They checked my vitals. Everything looked good at this point. I wasn't having any contractions or anything like that, but I knew my water had broken. And so, I kept telling him like, I've lost a lot of blood. Like we need to get to a hospital. And the way that my house is kind of situated, they couldn't get a stretcher in. So my wonderful husband sacrificed his desk chair, which is on wheels. He wheeled it in. They got me on it. He wheeled me out.
Oh, bless him.
They got me in a stretcher in the ambulance. And that was when they made the call that like, we can't take you to your hospital. We're going to have to take you to the closest one because there's just no way.
What was going through your mind? Do you remember?
I can tell you. I mean, I told him my blood type. I told him my IVF protocol. I told him IVF pregnancy, and they better take this seriously. This was, I think, like a week after Roe versus Wade was overturned, and I was like, I really want this baby. Do not send me to jail. I mean, there was no logic at all, right?
Yeah.
Like I begged him to keep it in me. I said, let me die, but keep this baby alive. Like,  And he just was like, first of all, you're not going to die. Second of all, we are going to do everything we possibly can. I understand how badly you want this baby. We are going to give it everything.
Oh,
Held my hand. And then, he he just kept talking to me, right? Like he just kept talking, tell me about, what you name him, like all of it. And I think, it was trying to keep me calm.
yes. And were you feeling like you might pass out at this point? Just blood loss and the adrenaline like rushes over and all that?
Yeah. So there were a few times that I'd gotten kind of like lightheaded and I told him and he's like, yeah, well, we've lost a lot of blood, and it was just one of those things that I think, angel on earth. I mean, he amazing human being, right? We got to the hospital and like he was like, you can't pass out on me because you're a better historian than I am for you. He's like, you know all your specifics. And he gave me just enough to keep holding on.
Yeah.
But they, got me to labor and delivery. They had paged for the on-call OB.
How far was this hospital? You said it wasn't your hospital. Like
it wasn't my hospital. It was, my hospital is about 40-ish minutes away. Breaking traffic law is probably closer to 25, 30.
Mm-hmm.
This one is the one right here. It's about 10 to 15.
Okay.
So it's close. They had a level 3 NICU, I think, which is why they made that call of like, they're close. They have a level 3 NICU. I know her doctor's not there. We'll figure that part out later on.
Mm-hmm.
So we got there, they called the on-call OB. And while they were waiting for her, they hooked me up to the Doppler and they were listening for Zion's heartbeat and they heard it. And he seemed fine. It seemed normal. It seemed totally normal. Like I was the psycho person that was like listening to his heartbeat every night. So I could tell them like, that's exactly what it sounds like.
So you had a Doppler at home?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And tell me, can we talk about his name real quick?
He is Zion Edward Merhammer. Just the bestest, perfectest baby ever.
Yes.
So his name's actually kind of funny. I mentioned Ron is Mr. Traditional, rational, pro-con list for everything. Mm-hmm. He had one rule with baby names. Well, he had two rules actually. So the first rule was we're not going to give our baby any weird names. And then his second rule was because Merhammer's such a long name, he was like, our baby's going to have a short first name because he has these like, I swear, I think he has PTSD from like back in school, like spelling Ronald Edward Merhammer is like.
Okay. Yeah. That's a lot of letters. Merhammer's such a cool name too.
It's epic.
Mm-hmm.
But we were actually on a trip together and he had pulled up his phone and he was going through like the top like 500 baby names or baby boy names. And like every name was just like, nope. Either one of us was like, nope.
Mm-hmm.
And he got to Zion and he was convinced I was going to say no, because like, so he went to Duke. If you're a fan of sports, Zion Williamson is like one of the biggest like basketball recruits in the last, I don't know how many years. So he's okay. Like, Zion. He's like, I know you're going to say no because like we're not naming our son after a Duke, basketball player.
I love it.
And I'm sitting there like, but I love Zion. Like, what are you like? When you think about like your child's name, right? Like you want to give them something that's just like amazing. And I was like, how, like Zion, that's just, it screams power. It screams like,
yes, it's so cool.
It's like a,
strength and love. Yeah.
And I Googled it, right? And in Hebrew, it means the highest peak.
Mm-hmm.
And he was mm-hmm. our, after everything we had gone through, he was our highest peak. And so it just stuck with me. And, he was like, well, I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I don't know if we're going to name our child Zion. But in my like little pregnancy app, like, instead of like baby nugget, it was now like Zion, like,
right. That's his name.
And, I just kept calling him Zion. And like, eventually we both were like, well, you've done it long enough. Like I'd done it long enough. And he's like, this is Zion.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was one of those like super organic,
I love that.
Thank you.
And Edward is Ron's middle name.
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
Edward's a family name. And that was kind of like our compromise because Zion was a little bit too much, right? It's not traditional enough. And I was like,
Sure.
we can give him a normal middle name. And that way, if he doesn't want to be Zion, he can go by like Edward or Ed or Eddie or whatever. And it's total like we were giving our child options. Is how I think about it.
Yeah, for sure. So back to the hospital.
Yeah. So on the Doppler, he's initially sounded pretty good, but I was starting to have contractions, like I could feel them, or stronger contractions. And like the next little bit is just totally a blur because like my mind was going all sorts of places. Ron eventually showed up because he had to drive separately from me. He couldn't come in the ambulance. There just wasn't enough space. So he eventually showed up. They're asking him all these questions, and I'm sure he was like crazy overwhelmed. Eventually the OB got there. She had like an actual sonogram, and it was when she actually started scanning for him that she realized his heart rate was dipping into like the 80s and 90s when it should have been the 140s. And so she saw that I had had a placental abruption. My placenta had completely separated from the uterus. So it wasn't even a partial. And she was like, we need to get her in for a C-section. And I do remember her saying, with how quickly we're doing this, there's a good possibility we have to do a traditional C-section, meaning she will never be able to have a vaginal delivery ever again. And in that moment, my only thought was, I don't even fucking care. Like,
yeah,
keep the baby alive, right?
100%. Yeah.
So they wheeled me in. They got me somewhat cleaned up. They had I had to go through general anesthesia. There wasn't any time for like a nerve block. They were like, we're going to have to put her under. And the next thing you know, I'm waking up. The first things out of my mouth were, where's my baby? Is he okay? They told me yes, he was born blue, so they needed to do CPR on him, but they got him back. And then the second thing was, where's Ron? And she's like, oh, he's right there. Because I was so drugged up, like I hadn't even looked to my. And so I'm still kind of coming out of it.
Yeah.
They're with me. The NICU doctors came in and explained that he was in pretty critical shape. That, I think she had said there's like a 40 to 50% chance that he'll make it. And I'm just like, well, he's our Zion. He's going to make it. I think it hit Ron faster than it hit me that like, that's not a good number to be at, to be, like your child's chances of survival are, essentially a coin flip. Like, I think he realized it and I was like, no, like we have gone through all of it and he is going to be on the right side of statistics.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let us see him right away because I was still really groggy. So they were like, we need you to kind of wake back up a little bit.
Had Ron gotten to see him or hold him or anything yet?
Ron had gotten to see him. He hadn't gotten to hold him yet. Yeah. So he didn't get to be in the delivery room because I was fully under. So they couldn't bring him in. After they revived Zion and got him into the NICU, they had taken Ron. So he's like, I got to see him for like literally, I think it was a split second. Grabbed a couple pictures, texted our family. And then he showed me the pictures and like, I was like, I just see this like incubator with all these blankets, right? Like I see where he was. They did wheel us down that night. Wheeled me down because I was still like not able to sit up. They couldn't get me in a wheelchair. And we got there, talked a little bit with the NICU doctor, and she was kind of explaining. And I can't even imagine, like as a healthcare professional, like I understood 20% of the words that came out of her mouth. I cannot imagine like it's a foreign language to anybody who has zero healthcare at all, right? And so, like, she was trying her hardest to kind of pare things down, but it's like there's only so much that you can translate at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Is like
Do you know, like, can you glean like what were like the major issues? Like,
yeah, so they hadn't done like so they had with the CPR, they with the compressions, she had told us that in most instances when they do that, the baby will experience either a brain bleed, a heart bleed, or both. And so she was telling us about the following morning, they were going to have a couple of tests run. One of them was called a fetal echocardiogram, which is like an imaging of his heart. And then they were going to do a couple of dye tests on his brain to see if there was any, she called them leaky vessels. So essentially, if there was a bleed in the brain.
mm-hmm.
She was kind of going through all of that, essentially just warning us, like, we're probably going to find bleeds and we'll deal with it, but the biggest thing was that his lungs were just super small. At 24 weeks, they're very, that's like the last organ to develop. And so she's like, they're super small. There wasn't really, they couldn't do, they didn't have enough time to do a steroid shot for me. So there wasn't really anything to help him out. Because I think from the time we called 911 to the time he was born, it was less than 2 hours. So like there was literally no ability to do that. That they were going over like some of the medications that they were going to try for him to help his lungs. They had him on epinephrine. They had him on a couple of other drugs. They had him on fentanyl because he was just like in so much, pain and everything. And I'm sitting there, oh my gosh, like I know what fentanyl does. Like, it's insane, right?
Yeah.
And then, they were also telling us like, hey, tomorrow when you come down, take a picture of his little hands with your wedding bands, because it's going to be amazing for you to see how small he is today and how much bigger he's going to get by the time he leaves, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
These, they're just holding on to just anything.
Totally. Yeah.
I remember her saying he was 1 pound, 8 ounces. And she was like, he's a micro preemie, but he's big enough that we can get the lines in, and I'm just
amazing.
This is good. This is good.
Right. How long was he?
12 inches long. I was like, I'm pretty sure he was about 12 inches long. So
yes. Zion.
Yeah. But they were so hopeful, right? Like they were just trying.
The NICU team is just amazing. Amazing.
I mean, just the amount of strength it takes to be able to, day in and day out, is just phenomenal. But yeah, so the next day that night, Ron ended up going home because he was like, we have blood all over our house. Our dog is locked in his crate because, we couldn't leave him roaming. And again, it's like our naiveness, right? That we just figured nothing is going to happen overnight. So he went home, and they had me on all the good pain meds. And I tried to sleep.
Did you get any sleep? I feel like that's not even like a thing.
No sleep at all. I got like maybe pockets here and there, and it was, I think, less actual sleep and more like I'm so drugged up that like I'm just like can't keep my eyes open.
Right. Were they able to tell you, Payal, about the abruption, why it happened, or like what caused it?
No. So the most common causes are some sort of trauma, like car accident, falling down the stairs. That had not happened with me. The second most common cause is some sort of bleeding disorder, like clotting disorder. And post-delivery, right, all of the blood work I had done came back clear. So at this point, as with everything else in my life, I have an unexplained.
Okay.
Etiology. Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, like my doctors, both of them, my RE and my OB, kind of said, hey, there's a very likely chance. We just don't have a ton of research about abruption and kind of beyond those two major causes, what else can cause it. So Just keep running tests until we maybe figure something out. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
So it's night one and you're not sleeping, of course. What happened the next day?
Ron came back early in the morning. He, had spent the night essentially kind of in the same situation as me. He didn't really sleep. He was cleaning up. He said it looked like a murder scene, which
Yeah.
he like dropped Buddy off at our boarding facility and essentially just like walked in and said, my wife just had a baby unexpectedly, like very early.
Oh.
You just take him, and we'll figure it out. And they were just like, we'll figure it out. Like, don't even worry about it. So that second day, in the morning, NICU called and let us know that he was getting all of his scans and everything done. And so they were like, we'll call you once he's out of all of the scans, and then you guys can come down and see him. Because right now he's like he's got all these monitors and stuff, and you're not going to be able to spend any time with him. So, I got up. They were able to kind of clean me up a little bit. I was able to actually change into like a legitimate hospital gown. Up until this point, I'd been in whatever I was wearing the night before. So I had like my t-shirt on, which was covered in blood. Like it was just terrible. The nurse was like, I'm hooked up to all these IVs. She's like, I don't know how we're going to get this shirt off. And I'm like laying there, like, just cut it off. And she's like, are you sure? I'm like, just cut it off. I'm never wearing this shirt again. And so they got me into a hospital gown. They were able to they ran a couple of IVs. I don't even know what the medications were at this point, like just, normal fluids and antibiotics and all of that. And then once we got the call that he was done with his scans, we were able to go to the NICU. So we got there. They told us like he did not have any signs of bleeding in his heart or in his brain, which was unheard of, really given everything that he had gone through.
Yeah.
And that made us feel really good, right? Like, okay, there's a chance. But then, and this is kind of NICU life, like it's this roller coaster, right? So like in that same breath, they're like, yeah, but like his oxygen levels are not where they should be, right? So like he was on 100% oxygen, but his blood levels were sitting at 85. And they're like, we can't give him any more oxygen. Like he's already at 100%. So we're just going to keep, working with the medications, keep monitoring him and kind of go from there. So we sat with him for a little bit, and we couldn't even hold him because he was so small that any sort of like physical manipulation was just sending his stats into like all sorts of crazy, just he was not very stable. And so, they were like, well, because you're on no touch, you can come by whenever you want. Yay. But like, you can't hold your baby.
I feel like that must have been so heartbreaking to not be able to pick him up. And I mean, like rationally, you're doing the right thing, right? But like the mama inside of you, like longing for this baby for so long, like that must have been hard.
Such a mind fuck because you want to hold your baby, but like you want them to keep telling you you can't hold your baby because that means that he's doing better.
Something's healing it's progressing. Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So like I every time we went down there, I had this dread of like, they're going to say, oh, do you want to hold your baby? Cause like, to me, that was just like, that means it's going in the wrong direction.
Oh yeah.
So, we had that good news. We were holding on to it. They got me into like a postpartum room, teaching me how to like pump and all the things. And like, at this point, I haven't even been in the hospital 24 hours and it felt like I'd been there for 2 weeks. Just kind of with everything that had happened. We got to go back and see him that evening and they said he was doing a little bit better. Like when we saw his monitors, his blood oxygen level was in the low 90s. So that was like really promising. Spent a little bit of time with him. And then that night again, Ron was like, I'm going to go home and shower and like sleep in bed. I'll have my phone on, so just call me. And it's 10 minutes away. So like we weren't too worried about it. I did actually get sleep that second night. I think I was just so like, everything was just, like at this point, the adrenaline's worn off and like, we're kind of settling in. And then the following morning, I like texted Ron. I'm like, can you stop at Starbucks for me and like get me like a pineapple refresher, please?
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, like I'll even put in the order. You just have to go through the drive-through. Like, this is how confident I was that nothing was gonna happen.
Yeah.
So he like, stopped by the Starbucks, picked up my drink, even made fun of me for it. Like, you're so basic that you're like, 2 days in the hospital.
I love you guys.
And we were talking and I said, today when we go down there, like I want to bring a book for Zion and we're going to read to him. Like that was something that I had dreams of, like bedtime stories together and like, everybody snuggled up in bed reading a book to Zion. And so I was like, we're going to do it. I know it's not the same as what we had envisioned, but like, this is important to me. And so he was like, all right, yeah. And he like, brought a book with him and everything. And this was the day that Sonia and Jen had, oh gosh, it feels like it was so like I was there forever, but like it was literally like not even 48 hours. They dropped by and it was, just my heart was overflowing. Like they had messages of love from like all the Rally sisters and like, were telling me about how people were pulling together and like, they had brought things to help me with C-section recovery. They had brought stuff for Zion. They brought him like a little stuffed animal. It was one of those where like part of me wasn't fully computing, right? Like that this is incredible. And then part of me was just like, well, yeah, of course all these people are going to show up for me. These are my sisters. Like what would they expect, right? So it was kind of like both ends.
Yeah.
And I remember telling them like, yeah, you guys come back in a couple more days and we'll bring you down to the NICU, like to see him. Right. Like it was just kind of like this, like, this is going to be a thing. Like we're going to be here a while, but we're going to figure it out. So we went down, after they left, we went down to the NICU. I had my book with me and we got there and they said, hey, like he actually had air leaking in his lungs and they were working on getting a chest tube in. And so when we got there, they were like, yeah, it's not a good time. Like, we're doing all this stuff. Like, go back up to your room and we'll let you know. We rolled right back around, went back up to the room. And again, not really like, it's okay. It's going to be okay. A couple hours later, basically what felt like the entire NICU team showed up to our room and like, essentially like sat down and said, okay, so we were able to get a chest tube in.
Yeah.
The other lung blew. And, in my brain, it's still not computing, right? Like it's still not computing. Like she's telling us like, okay, we're going to have to get another chest tube. We'll put another chest tube in and he'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then she said, you guys need to come down here. We'll wait and we'll see what happens. If his vitals don't get better, there's not much more that we can do. And we want you down there so that she said those words so that you can hold him. And my heart stopped.
Yeah.
So we dropped everything we were doing, got in my wheelchair, wheeled me down there, the entire time Ron's like, I'm sorry about the bumps. I'm like, I don't fucking care. Like, I'll blow all my stitches. Like,
seriously,
baby. And so we got there and I knew it was serious when they had pulled like the curtains around his little incubator.
Yeah.
And so we sat there and just watched and waited. Right. And I was willing to sit there all night. Please, stay stable. And his NICU doctor every so often is coming by like, I don't think it'll help, but maybe we can paralyze him. Or I don't think, and poor woman was racking her brain, just anything. And it was the hardest thing that any parent should ever have to ask their doctor. But, we have to ask her, like, is this actually going to help him or is it just going to prolong his death? And her voice broke, but she said, I don't think it's going to help. And so we said, no, like, we're not going to, I don't want him to be in any more pain.
Yeah.
He is. And so, it felt like an eternity, but at some point, they said that his vitals were getting worse.
Yeah.
So she told me, she's like, are you ready for us to start kind of like unhooking him? And I, said, yeah, like, what else are we going to do? Right. And they helped me unhook my gown so that I could at least have some skin to skin.
Mm-hmm.
And, Ron was able to get some pictures at some point, and I don't even know when this happened. They took his phone and they were taking pictures so that he and I could spend time together with Zion.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so small.
Yeah. What did he look like?
He was perfect.
Tell me about his perfect little body and face.
He had big hands and big feet. Big hands and big feet. And we didn't know, he'd never opened his eyes, so we don't know, but he had these eyelashes that were just so precious, and he had hair. He had dark hair like mine, and he was obviously my child.
Well, he's a badass like you, so obviously your child.
Gosh, Allie, he was just everything. He was everything. And I knew he was a crazy fighter because they had him doped up on fentanyl, and he was still just like, moving and going. And I was like, gosh, he is giving it everything he has.
Yeah.
And, we held him and we whispered sweet nothings, and we told him how much we loved him, and we told him how precious he was to us. And we apologized. And we just held him until he wasn't there.
How long was it? Do you know?
Not long enough and too long at the same time.
Yeah.
From the time that they unhooked him, it couldn't have been very long. 15, 20 minutes max, I would think. I that's my guess. Like,
yeah.
Oh. So we held him until we were ready to not hold him. And then they were able to unhook like all of his little sensors and everything. And while they were doing that, they told us that we could stay and watch, or we could go to a different room. And I couldn't watch. So they had us in a separate room. And we were just in shock. Part of me was thinking, like, while they're unhooking him, it'll be like the movies, and he'll like and start breathing,
right.
Part of me that's like, maybe. But then they brought him in, and he was wrapped up in a little swaddle, and they said, we could bathe him, but we knew he wasn't there.
Yeah.
So we bathed him. Our goodbyes, and in my heart, I knew that as much as I wanted to keep him with me forever, I also wanted to remember him as he was, whole.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that was our goodbye. So he, 48 hours almost exactly.
Yeah.
With us, and then it's like, well, we got back to our room, and it's the hard phone calls, right? You call family and let them know, kind of, hey, he didn't make it. And that was hard because they're not here with us, so they don't know what the roller coaster has been.
Mm-hmm.
They, it was a hard conversation.
Did Ron make the calls, or did you both, or like together?
We were together.
Yeah.
And, it was kind of one of those, like, he did a lot of the talking because I just couldn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to either.
Um,
So then did you have to stay in the hospital? Because you're still recovering too from
I'm
your
still
surgery, right?
recovering. We wanted to go home that night and they said no. It was late enough that there wasn't a doctor available to like discharge me.
Yeah.
But they said, we can discharge you in the morning. So the following morning, so Ron stayed in the hospital with me that night and neither of us slept. Neither of us talked. Just kind of laid there in our separate spaces, just kind of like not even really sure, where you go from there.
Right.
I think the only thing I said was, we're going to need a shit ton of therapy to get through this. And he, was like, all right, yeah, like we'll do it.
Yeah.
The following morning, I realized I didn't have any clothes because they had literally cut off the shirt and the clothes that I'd come in. So he wanted to grab me stuff and he's like, I don't even know what to get you. And I'm like, I don't even fucking care. Like,
yeah, seriously.
Anything to cover me. And so he like came back with like 3 different outfits as if it mattered,
Yeah.
I didn't know what would be comfortable. I didn't know what would be.
You're right.
And so I changed. And while I was waiting for him, I mean, just on autopilot mode, I'm calling daycare centers that we had scheduled tours with to let them know we're not going to make it. I'm calling my MFM to cancel our fetal echo. I'm calling my OB to cancel our upcoming appointments.
You're so strong to have been able to do that. I would have been like, they can all fuck off and figure it out for themselves. Like,
I was sitting there like, what else could I do in that?
Right. Well, yeah, it's probably this, maybe a sense of like something you can control or something you can. Yeah.
The nurse at one point came in and had a conversation about what do we do with his body? And I'm sitting there like, what parent, has looked into, and I'm like, I don't even know what the funeral homes around us are.
Right. Why would you? Yeah.
And she's like, I know this is really hard. Like, I know, she had a list that they had used before. And then she's like, we also through our hospital have this, our tiniest angels, memorial. So it's, essentially, all the babies gone too soon. They kind of do like a communal service for them. And as soon as she said it, I'm like, yep, that's what we're doing. Like, he cannot, I as much as I want to keep him with me by myself, like he is too big to be alone. He needs to roll with his homies. He's going to be with his crew. Like, he cannot be alone. He cannot. He cannot be in my house. Like, he needs to be free. And I like said that, and she's like, talk to your husband. Like, Ron's not even here at this point. So Ron got there and like we went over it and I'm like, this is it. And he's like, yeah, like that's it. And so like we were so grateful that they even had that as an option, and part of it I think was selfish. Like, I could not wrap my mind around the idea of like organizing my own child's memorial. Like, you're going to do it for me. Great. So like, we're sitting there like filling out the stuff for his birth certificate. We're filling out the forms for, the memorial and kind of what to do with the funeral home and releasing his body and everything. And then finally the doctor gets in, essentially looks at my incision and goes, are you sure you want to go home? And I was like, yeah, I can't stay here anymore. He's like, all right, I'll discharge you. He like gets my med list. The nurse walks in, gives me a tub of Cabo cream. Because she's like, your breast milk is going to start coming in and this is going to help dry it up.
Yeah.
He gave me a quarter sheet pamphlet of what to do.
Oh God.
And that was it. We got our discharge papers. I refused to be wheeled down. So I walked out of the hospital, holding a box of Zion's things. And got home. Ron went and picked Buddy up and started kind of picking up the pieces, I guess, in terms of where do we go from here.
Yeah. Well, I'm so incredibly sorry for all of that you went through, and you're so strong. I love that you want to share this story because I know how much you care about other people. And, you had told me before when you had agreed to do this, like, yeah, if my story can help even one person or connect with someone. So I just think it takes such a strong person to be able to relive all of this. And can we talk about the ice cream and Zion? Because I want everybody to know, because I will never, honestly, Payal, never, ever look at ice cream again without thinking of Zion.
But that's the plan.
That's the truth. So tell us about that.
So, in the weeks after we got home, I really had a hard time with how do I honor my baby. And August 4th was going to be 1 month 1 month since he was born. And I thought, if he was earthside, I would have celebrated the hell out of it, right? Waited 1 month. And one of the things that I had craved fairly consistently in my pregnancy was ice cream or milkshakes. And so I got on Instagram and put a little stories of for anybody that feels called to celebrate him, have an ice cream. Because that's what I craved when I was pregnant with him. And that's what we're going to do. And honestly, I will tell you, I was not expecting anybody really to do it. I was like, I'm going to do it whether y'all want to join me or not. We're having an ice cream party for my son, even if it's a party of one.
Yeah.
And in the week, leading up to August 4th, it was insane how many people were taking a picture of their ice cream cone and tagging me in it. And, I was like, well, I'm just going to repost them all because, hey, that's what you do in a party, right? You take pictures and you share them and it's all over the place.
Yep.
And so it kind of became his little thing where, we have ice cream for Zion, and Ron and I, we have ice cream on the 4th for his birthday. We'll have ice cream if we're having a rough day. And we just want to be close to him. It's just kind of become, a food that we kind of associate with him.
I love that. I love that memory. I think that's so, so amazing. And, another thing is just for any other lost parents who might be listening to this, I know this is still so raw, and grieving, we know, is not linear, and it's a process, and, it's everybody grieves differently. But is there anything that you have picked up along the way that you could share with people about going through something like this, and how you're back at work? You guys, there's things you have to do. And I feel like to a certain degree, I would just want to crawl under the covers and never come out. How did you put one foot in front of the other? How do you?
I think it's a testament to the people in our lives, honestly. When we started looking at going back, I had that same thought of how the hell do I do this? Am I going to go and quit after 2 hours? Right? There's no way. But, we have had some really incredibly supportive people in our lives, coworkers, friends, family, that have, they've checked in. And the biggest thing, right, is that they haven't tried to fix it, because you can't fix it. You can't make him come back. You can't take away the hurt. You can't take away the pain, but you can sit with somebody and, acknowledge how shitty it is. People have given us so much grace, and continue to give us grace. So that, is something that, for anybody listening, not just a lost parent, if somebody who's going through anything like this, whether it's a second trimester loss, a third trimester loss, a first trimester loss, it doesn't matter. A loss is, incredibly difficult for any parent. Let go of your expectations, right? In terms of what they need to be feeling supported. Ask them what would help, because like you said, it's different for everybody. For me, people eating ice cream and sharing that with me helped me feel like he made an impact. For somebody else, it might be triggering, right? And so, take the cues from that lost parent and give them grace. They may not even know what they need. I don't know what I need half the time. It's just when it comes to me, I try to verbalize it as best I can. But yeah, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be semi-functional had it not been for the people in our lives who have shown up for us, who have, given us space to mourn and grieve, who continue to do that for us.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening. Payal, I love you. I know we're going to be friends for life. And I'm always in your corner, and we will always think of Zion, especially when we are eating ice cream. So thanks again. Thank you guys for listening. As you guys know, I met Payal through Fertility Rally, and the bonds are just inevitable, undeniable. So if you guys are interested in Fertility Rally, check us out on Instagram at Fertility Rally. You can also always DM us. You can email us at thefertilityrally@gmail.com if you have any questions about membership. We have 4 support groups a week. We have 3 Facebook groups. We have a men's group coming in the new year, which you guys will hear more about. And we've got events and a website full of resources. And it's just this badass community full of people who have become family and want to support each other. So no matter what you're going through, assisted reproductive technology, surrogacy, adoption, all the things, just new to this world and want some friends and community, check us out. Again, thanks to Payal. Thank you guys for listening.